Powerful God can't force free creatures to do what he wants them to do, because then, by definition, they wouldn't be free. Trying to transition to another gender, which is impossible scientifically. Hell is a quarantine of evil. In order for you to bring up the objection, you're actually stealing a standard from God in order to try and say God doesn't exist. My problem is with the children, but I wouldn't even be talking about this issue unless I thought the current way the culture's going is hurting people, and it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not need to convince one leftist, one liberal, one socialist, one communist, one atheist to change their beliefs. We just need to get the church to live their beliefs. We need the church to follow Jesus, who said, be salt and light, who said, occupy until I come, who said to protect the little ones, who said to love your neighbor. Now, how do you love your neighbor in politics? The way you love your neighbor in politics is you work to put in laws that protect innocent people from evil. And that is what TPUSA is all about, to conserve what we know is good, true, and beautiful. If we, ladies and gentlemen, can get the church to be the church, most of our political problems will be over. Now, when you say this, however, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get at least two objections. The first objection is spoken. They'll say this. The second objection, they won't speak. It's quiet. It's behind the scenes. Here's the objection you're going to hear all the time. Oh, we don't get involved in politics. We just preach the gospel. Now, how do you respond to this? By the way, as if the gospel is just fire insurance. Is that it? No, the gospel is not just fire insurance. But how do you respond? When somebody says, I don't get involved politically, I just preach the gospel, I say, if you think the gospel is important, you better think politics are important. Why? Because politics affects your ability to preach the gospel and to live the gospel. If you don't think so, go to some of the countries I've been to. I've been to Iran. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been to China. You can't preach and live the gospel in those countries. Why? Because politically they've ruled it out. Can we have a TPUSA event in any of those countries? Can Charlie Kirk do the Charlie Kirk show in Saudi Arabia? Can I do my podcast in these countries? Can you have a church in Iran? Not legally. Why? Because politically they've ruled it out. So if for no other reason you ought to be involved politically, you ought to be involved in order to protect your ability to preach and live the gospel. By the way, a lot of people don't seem to recognize this, but Jesus was involved in politics. You say, how so? Who did he go up against the most? The Pharisees. And who were the Pharisees? The Pharisees were the religious and, wait for it, political leaders of Israel. They were on the Sanhedrin, which Rome delegated, or to whom Rome delegated most of the political lawmaking authority to. They were the politicians of Jesus' day, and Jesus scolded them. He said, you're neglecting the weightier matters of the law. And they were. In our country, we're doing the same thing. We're telling people what light bulbs they can and can't use, but we won't say, don't murder or castrate your children. We are neglecting the weightier matters of the law. Now, the second objection you're going to get is the one that's unspoken. And you know what that is? That objection is that many people in the church actually don't think Christianity's true. They're not actually sure it's true. Why risk my kingdom for his kingdom when I don't even know if his kingdom is real? Now, we could spend a lot of time talking about the evidence for Christianity. That's what I tend to do. I do it on college campuses quite a bit. I just want to give you one piece of evidence that convinces me that Christianity is indeed true. That the disciples, the New Testament writers, were not making it up. Why were they not making it up? Because it's too embarrassing. You say, what's this about? There's a principle historians use when they're trying to discover whether someone is telling the truth. It's called the principle of embarrassment. It says if there's something embarrassing to the author or authors in the text, it's probably true. Why? Because you're not going to invent things that make you look bad. You're not going to invent things that embarrass you. In fact, let me ask you guys this. How many people in here, you might invent things to make you look good, right? You might do that. How many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look good? Can I see your hands, please? If you don't have your hands up right now, you're lying to make yourself look good, and it's not working. We know you're lying. How many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look bad? No, you don't do that. You might lie to make yourself look good, but you won't lie to embarrass yourself. Well, the New Testament writers have filled the New Testament with embarrassing stories and details they never would have invented. They're not making this up. Let me just give you a few of them. The leader of the disciples is Peter. At one point, Jesus turns to him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Now, do you think Mark, who recorded this, at one point said to Peter, "Hey, Pete, I'm going to make this a real interesting story. I'm going to have the Lord call you Satan"? What do you think Peter would have said? "Have him call you Satan. This doesn't look good. It's embarrassing." Or Peter says, "Lord, I'll never deny you." What does he wind up doing? He winds up denying him 3 times. And then at the crucifixion, all the disciples, maybe with the exception of one, they all run away. They're cowards. This is like a Monty Python movie. Run away! They all run away. And who are the brave ones? Ladies. Yes, the women are the brave ones. Ladies, you can give yourselves a hand. That's right. I am woman, hear me roar. Now, who wrote the New Testament documents down? Men. Now, what man is going to invent that he was hiding for fear of the Jews while the women went down and discovered the empty tomb? Would any man in here invent that? No. If I was there, I'd make myself look good. I'd write something down like this. Let's see, we marched right down there and we overpowered that elite Roman guard. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. John said, "Get out." Peter roundhouse kicked him. Thomas said, "We'll be back." No doubt. And then we marched right down there on Sunday morning, and we saw Jesus, who congratulated us on our great faith. And then we went and comforted the trembling women. I would never say I was Mr. Sissy Pants why the women went down and discovered the empty tomb, but that's exactly what it says. And oh, by the way, why would you never say the women were the first witnesses in that culture? Forget about the fact it was embarrassing to men, it was, but why wouldn't you say that otherwise? Because a woman's testimony was not considered on par with that of a man. So if you were making this up, you would never have the women be the first witnesses, and certainly not a formerly demon-possessed woman. Gee, what a great witness, right? No, you'd only have the men be the first witnesses. Yet all 4 Gospels say the women were the first witnesses, which is telling us what? They really were. I actually had a woman come up to me once and she said, "Frank, I know why Jesus appeared to the women first." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because he wanted to get the story out." I said, "That is an excellent point. I had not thought of that." Ladies, when your man comes home from work, does he say much? There could have been a nuclear explosion down at the plant. He's not going to tell you. You'll see it on the news before you hear it from him. You'll be watching the news going, "Hey, hon, what?" "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. The nuke blew up. I've been hot for 3 days. What's for dinner?" He's not going to tell you. I can't even believe this next verse is in the New Testament, but it is. You know when Jesus takes his disciples up on the mountain of Galilee there to give them the Great Commission, where he says, "Go therefore, make disciples of all nations." Notice he doesn't say make believers. He says make disciples. "Go therefore, make disciples of all nations." Well, as he's giving the Great Commission, the climax of the Gospel of Matthew, it says right there in the text, verse 17, some believed, but some doubted. What? He's standing resurrected right in front of them, and they're doubting. That's embarrassing. It's like they're standing there going, you see that guy over there? Yep. That guy over there is Jesus. Oh, no, it can't be Jesus. He was just killed not long ago. No, I'm telling you, it's Jesus. Look, the Romans killed him. It can't be him. It's Jesus. Look, they put the spear in his side. Blood and water came out. He was hanging on a cross. He's dead. It's him. It can't be. It is. How do you know? The women told me. They're not making this up. There's even potentially embarrassing details about Jesus in there. His own brothers don't believe in him. That's embarrassing. His family in Mark chapter 3, they think he's out of his mind. They think he's nuts. That's embarrassing. He's called a drunkard. He's called demon-possessed. He's called a madman. He has his feet wiped with the hair of a prostitute, which easily could have been seen as a sexual advance. And oh, by the way, notice there are two prostitutes in Jesus' bloodline. The Messiah's bloodline. Who are they? Rahab and Tamar, who plays the prostitute. Now, do you think when Matthew and Luke got together to put the genealogies together, they said, you know what? I really think we ought to spice up the Messiah's bloodline a little bit. Let's put a couple of prostitutes in there. What do you think? No. They're not making this up. This is embarrassing. In fact, there's a lot of embarrassing people in the bloodline. Judah, from where we get the term Jew from, not a good guy. Read about him. Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. David, a man after God's own heart. Yeah, but he's a liar, an adulterer, and a murderer. Gee, I guess there's hope for the rest of us then, huh? This is not a made-up story, ladies and gentlemen. You need to have more confidence in it, and when you do, you will see that Jesus not only died and rose from the dead, but he then gave us marching orders to love our neighbor, to be salt and light, to occupy till he comes, to protect the little ones. That's why we're here. Now, if you want to go further in this, I co-wrote a book. It's called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It's on the book table out there. And I want to point out that all the proceeds from the sale of the book will go to feed needy children. Mine. Just so you know. Actually, that's not true. It's all going to TPUSA because we need to make a difference, ladies and gentlemen. Charlie was just saying the other day, he's getting emails from supporters of TPUSA saying, Charlie, I'm not going to vote anymore. I just forget it. We don't win even when we vote. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not commanded to win. You're commanded to be faithful. You're commanded to do what's right and leave the results to God. You just do what's right and leave the results to God. That's what we need to do. And we need to get behind Charlie and behind this great organization. By the way, I got to say this. I have never been to an event this well run, this professional, and I have never seen so many professional, put together, polite young people in one place. Have you? We need to get behind what Charlie and his team are doing and will at TPUSA Faith. Ladies and gentlemen, the scriptures are true. We can no longer be cowards. We don't have to change the left. We just need to activate the church. We need to get busy. We need to get out there. We need to actually activate the church. If we activate the church, then everybody wins. By the way, including the people that don't agree with us. Why? Because we're going to protect the innocent. We're going to protect the rights of the young. We're going to protect people that are in the most vulnerable places in our society. You know, the Apostle James warned us. He said, it is a sin when somebody knows the right thing to do and doesn't do it. The church cannot remain a bunch of cowards. Do you know the disciples were cowards before Jesus rose from the dead. They were scared, scattered, and skeptical. Yet as soon as they realized Jesus had risen from the dead, they became the most successful, peaceful missionary force in the history of the world. They turned around the Roman Empire, ladies and gentlemen. And we can turn around this great country if we activate the church. We've got to get involved, ladies and gentlemen. Even God can't steer a parked car. We can no longer be cowards. We actually have to be Christians. God bless you.